Dulce by Catherine Lane. Narrated by Ann Eder. Note: this is a story from the world of the set piece. The action happens after the book, and if you haven't read the novel, there are many spoilers. Two soft paws tapped Amy's chest and brought her out of a deep sleep. Opening her eyes, she met Dulce's curious gaze. The dog's pupils were deep pools of brown, so dark it was impossible to know what she wanted. This early in the morning, Amy didn't care, and rolled away from the dog, chasing dreams that were already fading. "It's the weekend, girl," she said, as if she could reason with the poodle mix. Dulce climbed up on Amy's side and licked her cheek. "Hey, babe." Amy slid her hand toward the other side of the bed. "Can you let her out?" Her palm fell on cold, empty sheets. Amy's eyes popped open for the second time that morning. Son of a bitch, where was Casey? They had agreed last night that they would sleep in, go get those cream-filled churros they loved, and celebrate yesterday's wonderful news together. Yes, yesterday. The third Friday in March was match day for medical students all over America. Casey had scored a residency in orthopedics at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, one of the best programs in Los Angeles. But more importantly, it had been her top choice. No, their top choice, really. Now they didn't have to move halfway across the country, or leave Diego, or change their life in any way. Seriously, it was the best possible news. They could march together into a secure, happy future. And yet, here she was, all alone in their bed, again. She clenched the duvet in her fist. Casey had promised they would spend the entire day together. Lately, there had been a lot of broken promises. Not that she really blamed Casey. Medical school in general was tough, and UCLA pushed its students hard. True, all that tough work had paid off with her first choice on match day. But residency wasn't the end. Christ, it was just the beginning. She didn't want to drag Casey from her dreams, but cold, empty beds and lonely mornings wasn't what she had signed up for. Dulce whimpered and pushed her head into Amy's lap, nudging her free hand onto her head. Amy ran her fingers through the dog's curly hair, and a tiny bit of tension ran from her shoulders. The pup had always been a comfort in this crazy life that required duplicity and secrets. Years ago, Amy had agreed to help out Diego Torres, a closeted gay soccer superstar, as his beard. She had thought the job would last 1-2 years tops, but now they were going on 5. During that time, Diego had made the U.S. national team and landed both a Nike and Under Armour contract. Every time Amy had approached him about going their separate ways, he had begged her to stay. He called her his good luck charm. And now, there was an unspoken agreement that she would continue as his fake fiancée, at least until he retired from the game. The crazy thing was, even if she was conflicted about this arrangement, Casey embraced it with all her heart. She had been Diego's assistant before they met, and loved him like a brother. She would never leave his side as long as he needed them. The weirdest thing was that this threesome worked. Diego continually rose to new heights. Casey had embraced medicine with a passion, and Amy? She had just opened a third task center to help low-income children, and she usually reveled in being the glue that kept this unconventional family together. Today, however, she wasn't sure that was enough. Glue didn't always work, and their 3 lives had seemed very disconnected lately. Under her touch, Dulce wriggled, and Amy ran her palm over the dog's head and down her neck, sinking her fingers into the dog's soft fur. What was this? Her hand caught in Dulce's collar. A piece of paper curled around the leather. She pulled, and a note written in Casey's block print unfolded in her hand. "I know you haven't had your coffee, so we'll start easy. Fill in the blank. Rub-a-dub-dub. There's a clue in the..." Amy bit her lip as she stared at the paper. Okay, she had to admit a treasure hunt was super cute. but the tension still rode in her shoulders. She slid from the bed and into yoga pants and a t-shirt, and then skirted around the bed. The ensuite bathroom was designer perfect. Diego had spared no expense when he built the addition, and the white marble gleamed when she flipped on the light. There, in the tub as promised, was a sheet of white paper rolled up like a scroll. A green ribbon, her favorite color, curled around the middle and gave it a festive appearance. Dulce trotted in behind her and sat at Amy's feet. She gave her bare foot a quick lick, as if to say, "I'm playing too." "Okay, give me a second." She grabbed the paper and rolled it open. "When we come home, after a long day, and cooking from scratch isn't something we feel, we grab something from the freezer, and this will zap us a meal." Amy met Dulce's upturned gaze. "The microwave?" Dulce wagged her tail in perfect agreement. In the small kitchen, Amy pushed the button on the stainless steel microwave. Its door silently swung open to reveal a coffee travel mug and another scroll of paper. She pulled the mug out and wrapped her lips around the lip. The latte was still warm. She took another long pull and savored the bold single-origin brew. Casey knew her well. She had thought of everything. Still, she tapped the rolled-up paper on the counter instead of opening it. Why was she having such a hard time embracing this adventure? Casey had clearly gone to a lot of trouble to create this game. On top of all the work, it was unbelievably sweet. Clearly, she had remembered Amy telling her about the treasure hunts her mother had put on for her birthdays when she was young. She should be all over this, but she still couldn't quite push away the annoyance that had rushed through her when she rolled over in an empty bed and thought that Casey had forgotten her promise, and the realization that she wasn't at all surprised. That was the kicker. She shook her head. She had to let that part go. She could deal with that reaction later. Right now, she had to see where these clues led her. "Where am I?" the paper asked when she had smoothed it open on the counter. "This is the place where our lips touched for the first time. I could have stayed in there forever. But I'm sure glad we opened the door and came out. To each other, at least." Amy bit her lip. She had almost forgotten Casey could be so romantic. Grabbing the coffee, she headed out of their private apartment into the heart of Diego's house. A long hallway dropped down to the main floor. The main living quarters were on one side, and a well-equipped private gym was on the other. Amy slipped inside. Diego was in Orlando at an away game, and the room was empty and silent. At the far end of the room was a door she knew well. The door in Casey's clue and the door that had changed her life. They were one and the same. In the intervening years, she had often wondered what would have happened if she hadn't opened that door to hide inside the closet, when she had uncovered the mystery at the center of Diego's problems. And then, suddenly, the past tugged at her. In her mind, she raced to the door, as she had that fateful day, and ducked in the closet before she was found. She had been in total darkness until hands had grabbed her. Amy had tumbled backwards into a warm body. Breasts had pushed against her back as she was caught and set upright. It had been Casey, and when the danger was over and Amy had turned to confront what on earth she was doing in the closet, Casey's lips were on hers. Or maybe it had been the other way around. Their lips had come together in a hard and passionate kiss. Casey's mouth had moved exquisitely over hers, taking full possession of her then and every time since. The life she was living now was the result of opening the door and that kiss. Back in the present, Amy raised her fingers to her lips. She could almost feel the heat from 5 years ago. The memory made Amy quiver, and she yanked at the handle of the closet door, hoping to see Casey inside. Her arms opened wide, pulling her into another kiss. She wanted that connection with her whole body. Physicality had always come easy to them, but her heart wanted something else altogether. The closet, of course, was empty. A high-end vacuum took up most of the space, as it had 5 years ago, and sitting on the round base was yet another clue. At Amy's heels, Dulce barked her encouragement. Amy slipped off the ribbon and flipped open the paper. Even though I have blades, I am the one who gets cut, or in this case, doesn't get cut. Come find me and get your prize. Amy nodded to herself. She knew exactly where she was going. A couple of weeks ago, workmen had woken her early in the morning. She was alone, of course, and surprised to hear that they had been hired by Casey to put in a new lawn of fake grass over in the side yard. A good idea. The side yard got little sun and was a muddy mess most of the time. But Casey hadn't told her the workmen were coming, and was just one more example of how quickly their lives were diverging. She wound through the kitchen and out into the backyard. The outdoor living space was gorgeous as always. The pool at the very center, where she had first met Casey, sparkled like an aquamarine jewel in the morning sun. She took a deep breath and rounded the far corner to the side yard. Casey stood right in the middle of the fake lawn, a soft smile on her face. As soon as Dulce saw her, she took off, bounding toward her. The pup stretched her front paws up Casey's legs, begging for a caress. Casey reached down for the dog's head, but her gaze never left Amy's face. "Hi," she said. "Hi." Amy stopped at the edge of the grass. "You found me." "Finding you was easy. Keeping you, that's the hard part." "I know." Casey took a few steps and closed the distance between them. "I saw it in your face yesterday, when Terrence was talking about us both going to Cedars." "I'm so—" "No, don't apologize. I love you with all my heart, and I never want you to feel as if you're left out of my life." "I love you too." She took the last few steps to Casey and grabbed her hands. "Loving each other has never been a problem. It's just that lately, I feel like you're moving forward and I'm treading water." "I know." And she did. Casey always knew what was in Amy's heart. That was her superpower. And here was Casey, pulling her forward into the deep water so she could swim again, so they could swim together. She wasn't alone after all. Even if she wasn't there physically sometimes, she would never let her flounder. Amy fell in love with Casey all over again. "I have my dream." Casey squeezed her hand. "Someday, I'm going to go into surgery and put an athlete back on the field to play the game she was meant for. Give her the gift that no one could give me. Someday soon, I'll be that doctor." "Yes, you will." The resentment Amy had been feeling ran out of her as if someone had opened a tap. "That's what I want. But I want you to figure out what you want. And it doesn't have to be right now. Don't get me wrong. The task centers are fantastic, life-changing for a lot of kids. But they are running themselves now. You need to figure out what your real dream is. I want you to have a match day of your own. I know what I want." The realization hit Amy so powerfully that she would have stumbled if Casey hadn't been holding on tight. "You do?" "I think I've known for a while, but I didn't let myself think about it, or really consider it." "We can't get married, you know." Casey's lips pressed together in a slight grimace. "I mean, I want to, but Diego." "That's not it." It was crazy how sure she suddenly was. "What is it?" "I want a baby." She rushed the words out, afraid when she said them out loud they would sound ridiculous. They didn't. They sounded even more right than they had in her head. Casey took a step back, and her stunned silence was at first alarming. But maybe if Amy kept talking, she would give Casey time to react in her own way. "Look," Amy began, "I know what you're thinking, that I'm just filling a hole with a baby, and that's probably part of it, but I've wanted a baby for as long as I could remember, and I can't imagine having one with anyone but you. I thought we'd find the perfect place and time, but I've realized that there's not going to be a right time. So why not now?" "You personally want to have a baby?" "Yes, I would like to get pregnant." Casey licked her lips, and her gaze darted down to her feet, but she didn't pull any further away. Amy held on with all her strength and heart. I know this is all of a sudden, but it's not like we can make one right here. It would take some time. Time and a man. No problem, we got that, Amy said. Diego? Who else? There was no one else. Diego will be a wonderful father, Amy continued, and any kid would be lucky to have 3 amazing parents. It would be unconventional to say the least, but isn't that what this family specializes in? The more the idea rolled around in her head, the surer she was, except she needed Casey to be on board as well. Isabella would be thrilled. Casey raised her head and met Amy's gaze once more. So would Diego, I think. Yeah, they both have made that quite clear. But would you? Would having a baby make you happy? Well, Casey laughed. It wasn't where I thought this morning was going. Casey didn't pick the thought up, and just as Amy thought the conversation had died, Casey added, But yes, I would love to have a baby with you. Amy bounced on her toes, and a whoosh of happiness flooded through her. Really? Yes, really. It will be a lot to juggle, but I've thought about it too. A lot, actually. Amy grinned from ear to ear. Why didn't you tell me? Casey stepped forward again. She was so close now. Their bodies were almost touching. I'm not sure. I wondered if I was being selfish. I don't want to carry a baby. And then I wondered how weird it would be with Diego and Isabella and everything. Because they would be super involved? Yeah. I worried that I might feel like a third wheel. Amy nodded. That was a legitimate concern. I'll work really hard to make sure that you don't. Casey rested her forehead on Amy's. I know you would. And if you do start feeling that way, you'll have to say something right away. There's going to be a lot to negotiate. I know, but we can do it, Amy said. I think so too. Casey leaned in and covered Amy's lips with her own to seal the deal. The kiss wasn't hot and desperate as the one in the closet had been all those years ago. No, this one was brimming with love and happiness, and even better, the realization that they had jumped a real hurdle in their relationship, with plenty of clearance. We're going to have a baby, Casey said with amazement as she pulled away from the kiss. Amy pointed to Dulce, who was snuggled at their feet. A second baby. They both giggled, and Casey bent down to gather the dog in her arms. It wasn't until later that night, when she was wrapped tightly in Casey's arms, did she realize that they had never finished the game. What was the treasure? She whispered in Casey's ear. Casey was almost asleep, but she stirred and leaned over to kiss Amy. Us. The treasure was us. Her breath was sweet against her lips. I just didn't know I was playing too. We'll always be playing together. As an answer, Casey pressed hard against her and began a very different game.